Hello and welcome. I'm so happy that I can do this video here where I can you guys show my LookDev template that I have made here in Solaris for Renderman, and I'm going to share it with you for free. Yes, you heard it right, it's going to be for free. But before we jump into the template where I give you guys a rundown, I want to make a huge shout out to Jason Gagnon, who actually helped me partially build this template, especially on the more technical pieces where everything gets a bit more smart here. So I'm not a very technical person and he's a really cool guy, so I asked him if he's willing to help me set it up, and yeah, he was a cool guy indeed, and he said yes, he's going to help me. And when I asked him if it's okay to share with the community this template, he was with that fine as well. So huge thank you, shout out, cool guy, so can only recommend him. All right, so let's start here node by node and have a look on this template. So a good habit is set your project here that we can take advantage of the job $job token here. This is going to make a lot of things easier. Also, I'm going to ship with you guys here this little folder structure. So some of the resource files I can share. For example, the plinth I cannot, since it's based on Quixel and Megascans. But for example, the chrome ball, gray ball, Macbeth chart is going to be included, and also the shader ball. So it comes here with this little folder structure. So the way how it works is I have made some subnetworks. The reason why I have not made an HDA is because it's just a bit easier to share with you guys this way, and now you're fully flexible to make your own HDAs out of it. Maybe you want to change some of the things I have set up here that it maybe fits your needs better, or maybe you can even improve some of the things, since yeah, I'm not the most technical guy. So yeah, they're now subnetworks. The way how it works is we just go inside and we see some of the things they're set up for us already, and then some of the parameters they're exposed here, or they're promoted here to the top level of the node. For example, where we want to load here our asset, we have then some things we can change. For example, the scale of the asset depends on what scale you're working. You can change that here, or translate it, rotate it, whatever you want. This is then going to be applied here. For example, if we want to turn this guy here, then we can do that here. So yeah, oh, that was the wrong one. So maybe you want to make minus, for example, then it's turning this way. So yeah, pretty self-explanatory, I think. So then here we just have a material library where we have a very basic llama material inside that is recreating mid-gray material that you would also find on a gray ball right next to the chrome sphere. Yeah, nothing crazy in here. And then here I'm using the material linker to assign it to the geometry. In your case, then based on your asset, you will then have a bit more materials here. But yeah, I think you're familiar with that. Next is going to be the render geometry settings, where we do have some overrides or attributes based on our geometry. For example, enable the displacement, set the displacement values and stuff like that, or trace sets, all this kind of fancy things we can do with that. You can just duplicate them if you need more, but this is just the starting point. So from here, I mentioned already the plinth. Unfortunately, I cannot share with you guys since it's based on Quixel Megascans assets, but I can give you a rundown of my plinth in general. So the node on the top is actually the same like this one. The only difference is we do have here a toggle for a reference human. So in my USD file that I'm loading here, I included a reference human that is coming from Maya that I can just toggle on and off. And this will be just here this prune, where I just promoted here the enable toggle to the top level, and then I can prune that from there if I want to. Again, just some render geometry settings, just specific for my plinth. And then the material library, I'm going to delete that then for the final file that I'm going to ship, since this is not going to work for you. And then I just assign the materials, so then you can create your own plinth if you want to use a plinth. And then, yeah, alter here the subgroup that it fits your plinth. This is going to be grafted in here in a different path. And then here we have the light rigs. So the light rigs, I have here two nodes. So one is actually for for light rigs that are USD based. So for example, if you have a studio light rig, we have different HDR, with an HDR and different area lights, or where you have a directional light for a sun, things like that, you can use this node. Or if you just have an HDR image, then you can load it here. So it just simply works with just going here with the path to where it is. And then here we can do some things like rotate it in a world space. We can change the exposure. We can load here up to 9 light rigs. I don't think you're going to need more of that. And then we can take use of that here on the render settings node that I have here. So here we set first the name of our asset, because this is going to be applied automatically then to when we render our images out to the file name. So then we will have the asset name, shader ball underscore, then we will have what camera got rendered, and then we will have what light rig got rendered. So set here the name of your asset. Then here you can set the path to where it should go. This is already pre-set up here to my render and then the version folder. And then we have here the frame range and the light rig. So here we can switch the light rig for the render preview here. Switch here, for example, to light rig 2. Then we can see it switches here to the different light rig. Yeah, pretty self-explanatory. So this is really just for the viewport here. The others are going to be applied also to your render outs. This is here just for the viewport. All right, let's stop this guy again. So then we have your 3 cameras. You can actually, karma, no, cool. So you can actually have as many cameras as you want, but I have just pre-set up here 3 cameras. So that means when we now switch here to the different render nodes, we see here that it switches automatically the camera that is set on the node itself, where we just get to in a minute. Of course, you can set these cameras the way as you want, that it fits your asset. All right, so then we have these huge blocks here. Those huge blocks are basically just duplications of each other. So we can just have a look on one. We start here with a keyframed transform node, where we just have the rotation of the asset itself and the light. So we can see here, this is just turning here the asset, and then here we have the light that is rotating around our asset. This is done here. I mean, yeah, I think, wait, give me a second. So I think this is keyframed here, the light. Yeah, sorry. So the light is keyframed here in case you want to see where the light rig is keyframed. That's done here, and here is where we just spin the asset and the plinth. So we can see here the plinth is actually turning 360 degrees together with the asset. So speaking about the plinth, I have it split up here in different elements. What does that mean? So we can have a look here on the plinth render node here. When we render this guy, we will see this is now only rendering here the plinth, but it still takes into effect our asset. The benefit of that is we can render the plinth separately from our asset, but it means we only need to render it once, and later when we render our asset in iterations, we don't need to render every single time our plinth. Quite handy, I think. So when we have a look inside here, we just have a very basic node connection set up here, where it's just everything is just for the plinth. Then here we have the references, so this is also to be included in the scene files. Here we can render then separately our chrome ball and mid-gray ball and our Macbeth chart, and this is also the way it should set up, that it's in the middle, or basically where your asset is. I see many people actually do it somewhere in the corner and render it together with your asset, which is not correct. This should be in the middle, or there where your asset is standing, to see how the light is where your actual asset is. So this is set up the correct way. Everything is in here. So we have here the asset, here's the material that it gets applied, and then here we have all the rest where we also just get to it. This is really very simple. Here we just have the background that is getting rendered separately, where we then can apply a blur, so we don't need to render this one each time when we render our asset. All right, now let's get to this guy. So we start on the top. We see here we have the label. The label currently set to the name of the asset. This will then also apply to your file name when you render out your frames. So we see here, this is the mid camera. So this will be then visible that, okay, this is the render of the mid camera. Then we have here the camera, which we can change, and then here the resolution. Here are some of the common render settings that I have exposed. You can absolutely add more if you want to. And then here are the light rigs. So we can enable more light rigs that we want to render in one go. What does that mean? For example, you have set everything up and now you want to go to bed and you want to render your light rig 1, 2, and 3 in one go. That's how you can do it. You can simply enable it, hit render, and then they're going all through after each other. Otherwise, you would have to render each of them separately, which is just a bit annoying because maybe the light rig just renders like, yeah, I would say maybe 3 hours to completion. And I think after 3 hours, you don't want to stand up again and hit the next light rig. So this is then just going in a row until they're all finished. It is set up in a way that here are all the render ROPs, and then they are fetched here, and then this render then is promoted to the top level. Then this render is promoted to the top level, and then it renders all of them that are enabled. So now we are also already inside of this ROP node or this render node I have here created, and we start here with the render vars that I want to have in any case. So I just can enable them or disable them here if I want to, and then I have here added the object normals and refraction on top. So here we can see we have denoiser turned on and off. That means if we want to render with denoise, then we have here all the needed AOVs that the denoiser needs to denoise properly our renders. And then here's the switch. Currently it is set that all renders that are going to be rendered then overnight or whatever, they will be rendered with the denoiser on. So when we look here on this node, we see it's going to be switched. Now it renders with all the AOVs, which we probably don't want when we render just here locally in our scene. So that's why here we have the preview stream, where we see here we have the render product. Here we can actually display what is getting rendered. So we see here everything is getting rendered. I need to quickly select this guy, that we see also the light. And then we can also see here on the render product, now it renders to this location. We have the name shader ball, we have the asset mid, we have the light rig 0, and then the frame number. And then from here we just then have the preview stream or then the final render stream. In case you don't want to render with all of those AOVs, you have two options. You could either just do this one and then it will render anyway, just that. Or what you can also do is you can go here to this one and type in off. If you want, you can also promote this one to the top level and then you can change it there. Since I render anyway just with the denoise on overnight, then I just have it that way. Again, this is a template I have made for me. You can absolutely change it the way how you want and save it then that way. So here we just turn off the dome light. Here we just change the visibility from the plinth to invisible, but we still get the reflection and the shadow from it. And then here we override the resolution based on our top level resolution we are setting here. And then we are saying here, hey, we want to have the denoiser. And then here it goes to the different light rigs and then it gets rendered out. So that's this guy. And then we have one left here. And this is actually my preview node. This is a super simple node. So inside we just have the Renderman render settings. And then here we change, what do we change? We change that we don't want to render incremental. So it's going to render with final buckets. I like to see my image sometimes rendered with final buckets, especially on creatures or characters where I want to see how is my displacement behaving together with the subsurface scattering, and I don't want to wait 3 hours just to complete a certain area. So I'm setting here to incremental off. This way I get the final pixel. And then here's the light rig selector that it actually respects what light rig I have selected here. And then we can just render from here to disk, and then it will render to it. I mean, we technically can quickly do it. So let's pause here that it releases the preview, the license, and then we can hit here render to disk, and then it will open it based on this render settings we have here exposed as well. That's basically this node. So you can have different resolutions. So then you set here this one to 3K, add here different resolution, then you have here different preview. here inside of it, which yeah, I think is pretty handy to have. So this was basically the whole template. So again, it's maybe not perfect. I'm not the most technical person. Someone with more technical knowledge maybe can improve it to have it even nicer. Or if someone is new, then I think it's going to be a nice starting point for you. Or maybe you have completely different needs, then you're absolutely free to change the way how the template behaves. Or maybe you're just interested to see how the Solaris stuff works, then you can reverse engineer here my little template and maybe learn something from it. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I hope you will like the template, and maybe it was even a bit learnful to see how a LookDev template can look like and work. And then yeah, happy rendering guys, bye bye.